Welcome to DripChat, the podcast for people that know fresh. I am your host, Space the Great. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing my OG, confidant, and above all else, my father. I couldn't dive into the world of podcasting without getting some insight from my greatest influence in life. Join me as we discuss everything under the sun, from social media, the black male experience, mental health, and even the coronavirus. So without further delay, let's get right into it. This is Drip Chat. The law of reciprocity. For life is a good one. The Practitioner. Some of these are great movie titles, by the way. I know you probably like mixing them in there.
I'm influenced by the movies.
Yeah, so two black guys, definitely pretty cool. Process. Like, these are all great Netflix titles. So what do you, when you think of, what a podcast is, what does it mean to you? Like, what do you think people come to a podcast in search of, as opposed to listening to the radio or an album?
I think people are seeking to be enlightened and empowered. Mm-hmm. When they listen to a podcast, it should be relevant to something that they're either going through or feeling that's happening in their life, that they feel like they need to have some either validation that other people are like-minded and think like this, and then they can maybe give them some enlightenment to their situation. Or if they're having some type of problem, that they can be empowered to be that there's someone like you that's going through similar situations and how they overcome certain situations. I think it's an educational process that people like to, who choose to be educated. They can find a format that they can be educated on. And I just think that it's a podcast to me is a community.
Right. I think couple of scenarios that come to mind when I think about what you just described is church, Alcoholics Anonymous, those type of groups where, like, it took for you to go through something to get to this point, and you come here seeking refuge almost from everybody that's not like you. You just want to hear from somebody that's been in a similar situation as you, that you can feel comfortable and know that you're not alone.
Right.
So, I think that has a lot to do with, what people come to podcasts for. And then people like to just get free game. I think it gives people a chance to get free game. When you listen to a rap song, it's only 3 minutes long, and a lot of people have taken life lessons from rap music and songs. And, a podcast gives you an hour, 20, 30 minutes to an hour of free game. People seeking enlightenment, like you said.
Yeah, I like that. I like the free game, because people like to feel like they're getting something for nothing.
Absolutely. If you can, send them better than they came, then,
yes.
you've accomplished something. So aside from the listener, you as the podcaster, what do you think your responsibility? What would you like to get out of being a podcaster?
I would like to enlighten and empower people through my own experiences, missteps, mistakes, accomplishments, that I can show people that there's many ways on the journey.
Okay.
That you can take, and you can take sometimes I was saying we're all trying to go from point A to point B, and sometimes through the course of life we go down that path to point C. Mm-hmm. And how do we get back to point A to go back to B? Mm-hmm. Because C is a point of uncertainty, of problems. You know, so many people veer off to that road. I mean, we have enough problems going from point A to point B, but that's the path that we need to go. We don't need to go down point C.
Right.
So how do we get? And then also, how it's like a map. Life is the journey, and there's a map that you have to somewhat follow. And sometimes it's instinctively, it's an instinctive map, and sometimes it's a map that's kind of been laid out for us. But either way, we have to be able to be journeymen down this path and figure out how do we be successful in this.
Okay.
Because we're all going to be born to die. We're all going to die. So, but in between that, how do we become successful in that journey? Mm-hmm. To our ultimate fate? And how do we be happy? I can't always be happy, but I don't have to be unhappy.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand that.
And that's the thing that I try to be. It's like I know every day my goal is to be happy, but I know I can't always be happy. But I don't have to be unhappy.
Right.
And that includes the people that I'm associated with, people that I'm around, what influences me. All those things matter. That's why, subject matter is an important aspect to all this, because I'm a subject that matters. Okay. And if I don't feel as though I matter, then how can I feel that you matter?
Right.
And I think that's the psychological and mental challenges that we have. Most people walk around every day that they don't understand that they matter. They matter how not only you affect yourself, but how you affect others.
Absolutely. Just having my own space and allowing my family to, interact with me in this space as a homeowner has kind of opened my eyes to my value. I think a lot of the times we just don't know, how much we mean to somebody until it's too late. How much somebody means to us until it's too late. So
what was it besides having a home that clicked for you, that made you realize that you matter and you matter around the people who are around you?
I think my first I matter moment was probably when I had my first barbecue or a big gathering at my place, that people from everywhere came to. There was family that probably wouldn't even be all together if it wasn't for me. So I felt wow, I'm really responsible for all these people being together, and that situations like that have been something that I try to make happen a lot. So I'm always inviting family, and you've seen how we've had events here at the house and things like that, and those are the most enriching things for me. I think.
I mean that
shows me that I matter.
Yeah, and that's to you is satisfaction. Mm-hmm. That this is a purpose of why you're here. Mm-hmm. So that you can see how people are enjoying themselves and loving other people because of you.
Right. And it wasn't a material. It wasn't a feeling that something material could give me. I was getting feelings that I never felt before, but it was fulfillment, but it wasn't buying a pair of shoes. It was a different kind of satisfaction.
Yeah, it was something that was soulful and something that was meaningful to you. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that a lot of people in our society today, they're trying to fill that void of what's soulfully meaningful to them by purchasing material things or having material things or thinking that money is going to be the answer to everybody's woes.
Right.
Instead of looking and doing the work within and having to fall down and be humbled and to really see all that other stuff doesn't really matter. It's what your family and the things that you can love unconditionally that matters.
Right. Very true. So it took a while for me to make that have that epiphany that 90% of the stuff that I deal with on a daily basis is meaningless, and then this is what is the real thing.
Right.
And it's kind of challenging to find the balance in my line of work, I think, because we're in that world, and it's a
very superficial world.
Things it's always something new, and in order to be considered relevant, you have to be up on it. Well, and that's just the game.
Well, it's like hustling on the streets. Nothing on the streets stays relevant for long. It's always changing. It's always like a new guy or new deal or new this. And being in the garment industry is like that. I mean, you're already going into 2021 in a few months, thinking about so you can't even appreciate and enjoy today because you're already looking at what's for fall 2020, holiday 2020, spring 2021.
Right. I'm living. I was here in February, in October. I was working on February and October.
Yeah.
And it's always something. Always something. But I think it's a good experience because it allows me to see probably at a broader scale, how to make those judgments on what's real and what's not. Well, you learn what's real by what lasts.
Right. Well, I always say nothing new is true and nothing true is new.
Right.
It always has to go through the test of time in order to be relevant and to be long lasting, because things come and go all the time. But usually anything that's new, if it hasn't been proven true, it doesn't last. And anything that someone says is true, if it's new and it hasn't proven itself, it doesn't last.
Right.
It has to go through the test of time.
Very true. Very true.
And that's how life is. And that's one of the things
how life is.
I'm thankful to be here 60 years on Earth. I told you just yesterday, I can't believe it's come like that quickly.
Yeah, you lasted.
Yeah. But, people just don't really know how. I guess I get a little crazed trying to make sense of life, my life. And, I try to use logic and reasoning to understand this journey that I'm on.
I think that's just us as men. Men have to, not taking anything away from the opposite sex, but I just think as a man, you have to operate from a place of logic. Like, you have to try to make sense of things.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, I have to make sense of things.
Right.
I have to understand the logic and reasoning behind it. I just can't put my feelings necessarily ahead. Not to say that feelings aren't important and not to take away from that, but a lot of times our feelings can distract us, because a lot of times our feelings come from a place that happened a long time ago. And a lot of times we play victim to our feelings, and we carried it into our present and going into our future with the misguided feelings.
Do you think emotion is the enemy of logic?
I don't think it's an enemy. I think it has its place in logic, because I'm a human, so I do have emotions and I do have feelings, but I can't allow my feelings and emotions be ahead of my logic. They have to either be coincide or they have to be slightly behind my logic.
Mm.
For me.
That makes sense. Makes sense. So, what do you think going forward the future of podcasting will turn into? Is it going to be something that's just a fly-by-night thing, or is it a chance for everybody to be their own personal radio station?
Well, I think it's something it's going to keep evolving, mm-hmm. and as far as evolving into what, I don't necessarily know, but I think because of social media and now podcasting, that people want to be able to have a voice, mm-hmm. and an opinion that can be heard by other people who are maybe like-minded to what they're thinking. Mm-hmm. So I think there still will be a place. Do I think there will be a point of oversaturation? Yes. I do think that there will be some point where people just would say, I don't want to hear another podcast.
Right. I mean, is that what we've seen happen with talk shows, that it's just evolved into a reality show? Or, I mean, where do we go from here?
Well, the tricky thing is that when I was in the clothing industry, I would call it closet consumption. You
told me about that.
Yeah, and for people who don't really know what that means, it's like when you go into your closet and you have 20 or 30 pairs of jeans, mm-hmm. and they're all the same, either shade or wash or silhouette. It's like you don't need to buy no more of those type of jeans.
Right.
So what do you need to buy that's different? Mm-hmm. So that's the same thing with podcasts. Like, how are you going to create a podcast that's different but not indifferent? Mm. And that's just how, with anything, how do you create something that is different? I know I always tell you, Kiana and Noah, that you have to be first, best, or different, right, in order to be successful. And I still apply that to anything that you do. You have to either be first, best, or different.
Right. So, do you think this makes people want to read more, explore, and get more knowledge? Do you think is it revitalizing the self-help?
I think more people are looking for self-help. Mm-hmm. I think there's a definite big market for self-help and self-discovery. Self-motivation, motivational speaking. People are looking for, as people lose their faith or lose their religious or spiritual path, they're going to be looking for others to help guide them, mm-hmm. through this. I mean, there's no real roadmap to how to go through life. So if somebody can have the right catchword or have the right catchphrase or say the right thing to them, people are going to listen because, mm-hmm. people are open.
Does it give people a false sense of what's out there in the world?
Absolutely. I mean, once again, nothing new is true, nothing true is new. Mm-hmm. If you haven't applied it, I mean, what the problem with people today is that everybody wants instant results.
Right.
Everybody wants instant gratification. Mm-hmm. Instant potatoes, instant coffee. And from how I was brought up, nothing instant is good. Instant coffee is not as good as fresh brewed coffee.
Right. Anything.
Or instant potatoes is not as good as mashed potatoes that you boil the potatoes and you mash up the potatoes and add the milk and the butter and the salt and pepper.
Fast food isn't as good as a home cooked meal.
No.
Absolutely.
No. But some people are looking for that.
Some people just like fast food.
Yeah.
But what does it do to their system?
Well, over a period of time, it's usually not a good result.
Are they consuming too much? Is it too much information available today?
That's a kind of a loaded question. There's too much information. The problem is that it's good to have information. The problem for me is that you don't have enough time to process it.
The brain can only handle so much at a time.
Right.
So what does that do? Does that create anxiety?
I think it creates anxiety. I think it creates a false sense of security, because some people will just
think you know it all.
They think they know all. We can just Google something, or we can Wikipedia something, and we have the answer, instead of actually going into the dictionary and looking up a word and finding what the definition and the meaning is, and say, oh, what's this other word that's above it or below it, or a page before it or a page after that I can also learn, instead of just that one thing that someone else has told me the answer to.
You know, I remember when I played video games as a kid, you know, they would have strategy guides. You know, and you would just, if you couldn't figure out a level, you would just look at the strategy guide, and then they would tell you exactly how to beat it, you know, versus figuring it out, you know, the old-fashioned way.
Well, it's just like Cliff Notes. When you had a book to read, you get the Cliff Notes, and they just paraphrase everything that you needed to know about the book, but you really haven't got the essence.
No.
You really haven't got the meaning of the stories and the characters to really absorb it, to understand it, and then have a theater of the mind of what that story is about.
Right. Yeah, I think anytime I use Cliff Notes, I wasn't trying to read the book anyway. Most of the time, they didn't really help my grade. I probably still it was probably good enough just to pass.
That's what's happening today.
That's very revealing. It makes it just good enough to pass.
And that's the problem with people. People want they want all the fame, the glory, by just doing enough to pass. No one wants to be above average. No one wants to be better, because it applies work. It applies dedication. It applies sacrifice. And some people are just not willing to give up that.
So what do you think? Do you think the key to success is waking up at 6 a.m., going through all of the motions and making sure everything gets done every single day? Or is it part luck and part chance and part hard work?
That's a good question. I think it applies differently for everyone. I think everyone has to kind of figure out, you know, first of all, what's your purpose? What do you want to do with your life? And then whatever it is that you want to do with life, how much are you willing to sacrifice and willing to work to get to that stage? And, you know, some people might want to wake up at 4 o'clock a.m. Some people may want to wake up at 6 o'clock a.m. Some people may want to wake up at 8 o'clock a.m. And they still can go down the same path and get to the same results. It just depends on your applications, on what all that you've been able to simplify or to complicate in order to get to that goal.
So is success not even having to get up in the morning at all?
Well, you know, success is in the eye of the beholder. You know, what determines success? You know, a simple man who has learned how to be a wise man, that might be his success. He may not want to have the materialistic things or all the things. He may want to get up at 4:30 in the morning and go sit outside on a mountain and meditate and memorize affirmations and pray. That might be his success. So what is success? Success is in the believer.
Is success a place, a number, state of mind?
I think success is a state of mind. I think it applies to the believer. Like, who am I to say what is successful and what's not? I mean, I see a lot of people who I consider successful, and they might be the most miserable people in the world.
Right.
But does that make them successful? Because they may have monetary gains, but they might be bankrupt inside. No.
So there's no correlation between success and happiness, yet everyone wants both.
Yes.
So how does that work?
I think once again, balance is the key to life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you find? What do you really know? What makes you happy?
Mm-hmm.
Do you really know what makes you feel successful? I think that's the challenge in life. I don't think anybody really knows what makes them happy, because just when you think you're happy, something else happens to make you unhappy.
So how do you defend against things that are sent to destroy your peace? How do you avoid unhappiness?
Well, I don't think you can ever avoid happiness, because I think some things that could just happen that you can't avoid.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being unhappy is a natural emotion, like there is being happy. I think that's just
can't have one without the other.
You can't have one without the other.
Okay.
So I don't even try to play that trick bag with myself. I'm trying to, stay away from happiness. The times that you're trying to spend being happy or avoiding unhappiness is setting yourself up to fail. Live your life. I embrace my unhappiness as I embrace my happiness. I just try to make it as limiting and as minimum as possible.
Do you think people fake happiness?
Oh, all the time. Look at Facebook.
Very true.
Yeah. Look at Instagram. You see someone put a picture on Instagram or put a picture on Facebook, and they're showing that they're all happy. Do you think they're just happy like that all the time, or you think there is something that's going on in their life that could be happening parallel to that's making them unhappy?
Right.
I just think it's an illusion sometimes, and I just think that some people want to put that mask on or that face on to make them seem like everything is going well, but you're not learning the totality of that person by viewing someone's picture on Facebook, whether they're happy or unhappy.
Right. Do you think social media has advanced society or sent us backwards?
I think both. I think social media has viewed our society as I think it's a prodigious conspiracy against mastery. I'm trying to master life. I can't master life by getting caught up in social media and looking at what someone else is doing and feeling some kind of way because they're doing this and I'm not doing that. Or I'm doing this and I have probably 1,200 Facebook friends. So why am I only getting 100 likes from my Facebook friends when I put a Facebook posting or a picture on?
Right.
How come all these people who are supposed to be my friends not liking it or not having some type of, I'm not garnering some type of emotion from them? So are they really my friends?
That's a good question. Do you think that creates anxiety for you, or does it? Is it even something that is really? Does it really even matter?
Well, here's the thing about social media, and I feel like there's a place for social media. However, I think that we're all drink the juice, so to speak, by thinking that we have to be liked or loved in order to be acceptable.
That's the dopamine.
Yeah, that's the drug.
Very true. I mean, it's all shock value.
It is.
It's everything that...
It's instant gratification. You put up posting or a picture up, you are expecting someone to respond to it. You're not just putting it up there and not expecting someone to not like it or share it or love it.
So I mean, essentially, does it affect the way you feel about yourself?
For me, no.
Okay.
No, I'm not. I think at some times I felt some kind of way if it's funny. I hate to say it like that, but I put stuff on Facebook, and if a certain person hadn't liked it or responded to it, I'm saying like, what's wrong with them?
Yeah, well, the first thing somebody does when they feel away is stop liking your pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. So are they really my friend? It's going back to my original question.
Yeah, if something as petty as social media, that one thing that it does do is it identifies people's behavior patterns.
Yes.
You can definitely tell people's patterns by what kind of pictures they like about you. It describes how they see you as a person.
Yes.
You begin to get a better understanding of what they admire about you. Like they might like a picture of you raging at the club or the bar, but they won't like a picture of you holding your baby because they see you as this party animal and not a father figure, and that might not register with them the same way this does. And that's just how it is. It's just no different than I got chicks that follow me on social media. They may like a picture of me by myself, but not with my wife. That's just how it is. I notice. I think things are noticed, but I try not to think about it too much because at the end of the day, it's an app on a phone, and I try not to give it so much power to be more than just that because it's the gift and the curse.
Yeah,
it's the gift and the curse.
Yeah, and that's my point is that we have to practice balance. Mm-hmm. Balance is the key of life. You can't be too far left, too far right. The problem with us as a society, as a people, is that we're creating this great divide. It's like either you're with me or you're against me. Either you're rich or you're poor. Either you're black or you're white. Either you're pro-life or you're pro-choice. Either you're straight or you're gay. Either you're a Republican or a Democrat. Either you're black or you're white. It's like we are now living in a polarized world because and due to social media that we can now find our own little clique or our own little subculture, and we can be fed off of that. And instead of trying to be blended or try to be more understanding of the other side. Because if you're not understanding or believing what I believe, then you're against me. Because we're now becoming so tribal. We're becoming so insular to just believing in what we want to believe because someone else believes in what I believe, that we don't need to understand what someone else who's different than me believes.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, it's interesting to see how that works. In the middle of election season, I think we're seeing it the most. It's a lot of tribalism going on right now. How do you think that's going to affect the next couple 6 months? How do you think that's going to roll out?
Well, I think
with that, and then you got this virus, coronavirus.
Well,
is that going to become a topic of discussion at the election?
Well, the coronavirus, depending on we don't know.
The first death in the U.S. was confirmed today.
Yeah, we don't know where it's still. We knew about the coronavirus all the way in 2019 at the end of the year, but it wasn't until January that people started taking it serious based on what was happening in China. it's gotten a real good head start in the world now. Because we had Chinese New Year in January. People came from all over, went in, went out, and now we got to see how long or how deadly this virus is going to be. You know, the one thing about the COVID-19 is that it's really unknown to man of a cure. We don't have a cure for this. So what's different about this virus is than the regular flu virus, because there's some flu viruses that are also fatal and deadly. But what this one has a 20 times greater percent of mortality than the average virus.
Wow. So it's harder to kill.
So it's harder to
kill.
Oh
wait, do you mean it's easier for it to kill us?
It's easier for it to kill because it has a higher percent of being fatal than the regular virus, because it's affecting your lungs and your breathing capacity.
So are you going to start wearing the face mask?
I don't know yet. You know, that's something that I've been debating and talking about. I mean, I just flew down here to Atlanta, and I definitely saw people even sitting next to me, full on mask and full on rubber gloves. And you know, I don't want to be fatalistic in saying that you know, this is going to get worse or anything, but I just don't know. I don't know how I'm going to. I know that because I am in the public and I do work with a lot of different people, that I will try to be as preventable as possible in trying to contact any type of deadly flu or flu virus.
Do you think people are naturally clean, or do they only clean because it's
people are
dangerous?
People are
they
filthy.
don't.
People are sorry. People are filthy. I work in the public. I've seen people. I don't have a real good opinion about people's cleanliness. I live in New York City, where I was just on a subway last week, and I saw a woman literally coughing into her phone, switched hands and coughed in her hand and grabbed the subway pole with her hands she coughed in. And I had to tell her, like, you know, that's not cool. And people just do it not thinking. And I see it all the time. People are just nasty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, I get shocked every time I go up there. You know, it's always something. You know, even, I mean, who do you think is going to be the first to get hit? Is it going to be the poor?
Well, the poor, you know, I think this flu virus is, it doesn't discriminate between rich and poor. I just think it comes down to, you know, hospital care. Who gets the best hospital care?
But does that mean that the poor who can't afford health insurance are going to be the first to?
It's always that way.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, we're in some real challenging times. And for me, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, but for me, you know, I have to believe in my faith and my God to kind of like guide me through this, because one thing I've learned in my 60th year, my 7th decade on this earth, I can't do it all by myself.
Right. Very true. So do you think people try to replace God with other things?
Oh, absolutely. man has been doing that since the beginning of time. We've always had false idols and false worships, and today I think it's even more so. I think man has lost his true identity, because man has now evolved to where he's all-knowing and knows everything. See, for me, there's what I call the natural and the supernatural.
Okay.
Man deals with the natural. God deals with the supernatural. That's why you can't see God or feel God or touch God, because he's supernatural. Because if he could be touched and be seen, man will muck that up, because they would think they would be better than God.
Well, first they're going to identify him by his skin color.
Yes.
And, then there'll be another big thing about that.
Yes.
That's why when Jesus was in human form, he caught it.
Yeah, so that's the failure of man. Man has always tried to class somebody or oppress somebody or be better than somebody based on either economics, racial, or gender. Man has always tried to be better than another man. Whereas God, as long as I'm a child of God, I know my Heavenly Father, I can never be bigger than Him. Mm-hmm. It's not even a debate. But if I'm a man and I see another man, and because of my frailties, I think I am better than him because I either have socio-economic means that are higher than him, or I'm a different skin tone than him. That's a falsehood. That's being on a false pedestal. Right. Because at the end of the day, you came into this world with nothing, and you're going to leave this world with nothing.
Right. But I think what is important is what you leave behind, right?
Well, what I leave behind is my legacy.
Okay.
And my legacy is my family. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping before I leave here that I can give them some seeds of wisdom. Mm-hmm. I want my children to be better than me. That's my goal, is that they advance more than I can advance. You got the better side of the deal than me, because I'm only going to be here for a limited amount of years. You still have a full life left. Mm-hmm. And your children and their children mm-hmm. have a opportunity that's going to be better than hopefully you. That's what the legacy that I want to create.
Mm-hmm. So do you think technology has evolved faster than humanity?
In terms of the applicable skills, yes. Mm. But, it's just like a smartphone. Smartphone is only as smart as its user. Mm. So it's as advanced as technology can be, it can only be as advanced as its user. Mm. So, we're not totally there, to my knowledge, where we have computers running everything that is not programmed by man. So until that day has or will arise, I still think man has the edge over technology, because we have one thing that technology doesn't have. We have feelings and emotions.
Mm. Do you think eventually they'll be able to program feelings and emotions into artificial intelligence?
Oh, I think so. It's going to happen. We have Siri, we have Alexa now, and I hate that shit, man.
I do too.
I hate that shit. I had that shit in my home, and all of a sudden Alexa pops up, and I'm saying like, oh, I'm shutting you down.
Yeah, I never. I had it plugged up for like a week. I got it as a Christmas present, but I turned it off. I heard a story about the Alexa just burst out like laughing or something, and like scaring kids in the house, and I just took it off. And at the same time, for her to always hear you, she has to always be listening, right?
Well, that's my point. Mm-hmm. Alexa is always listening and gathering information, mm-hmm. and not forgetting.
Right.
I forget yesterday. So why would I want to have some kind of technology that's listening and gathering information and knows more than me in my house?
Speaking of that, do you allow your applications on your cell phone to utilize the Bluetooth and the microphone? Do you think that have you ever had a situation where you were talking about something and then the ad for it pops up on Facebook?
Yeah, I think it's all interconnected.
It does. It really happens. Like you can be talking about something, not even, you can clear your sash right now and, just randomly be discussing something. And I think if the app has access to your microphone and your Bluetooth, if the app is still open, the microphone is on.
Right.
But you have to cut the mic off, or you can set your phone up to where you can disable it all.
Right.
Do you think that is somebody listening and actually doing that, or is it just?
I think anything's possible. There's things I know, and there's things I don't know. But there's more things that I don't know that I don't know.
Mm.
So I'm hoping that's one of the things I don't know that I don't know.
So what are some of your other notes that you had besides the names?
In regards to the podcast, I think that the podcast should be innovative, should be provocative,
Mm-hmm.
it should be informative, it should talk about experiences, life experiences, so that people can relate, understand, and can connect. It should be able to exalt our culture. I think that's one thing that we don't do. We don't exalt our culture. We always talk about all the negative things about our culture. What about the positive things? What about the good things that has maintained and has evolved into positive, good experiences for us?
What would you consider an example of?
Music.
Okay.
I think our spirit and our soul exalts our culture. In spite of all that has happened to us over 400 years ago, in spite of us being held back in a mile race at the 800 mark, we're able to finally say go, and we're still able to catch up.
And in some cases get ahead.
I think that's why I know there's a God. Right. That's why I know that I believe in miracles. And that's what makes me unhappy when I see that we get caught up in that bullshit that we can't overcome, that we can't rise. Because I've seen so many people personally and impersonally overcome.
Do you think the confusion in our community is organized?
Well, I think there's some people who are just great leaders, and then there's some people who are great organizers. The problem that we have in our culture and society is that we sometimes glorify the great leaders over the great organizers. So, for instance, we had Malcolm X, we've had Martin Luther King, we've had Marcus Garvey, we've had a number of great leaders, but no one really talks about the organizers who were behind the scenes, who was able to exalt these people to be leaders and still keep the movement going or keeping the organization going. So sometimes we put more, I think it's an imbalance of putting more emphasis on the leader instead of the organizer. A lot of people don't even know who Ralph Abernathy was. And
well, they know here.
Well, in Atlanta, yeah, but nationwide, a lot of people don't know who he is. So once again, balance. It's balance. Maybe I'm just that's stuck in my head about balance being the key to life. But for me, I'm always trying to move the weights from tilting one side overly than another side. I always have to move that weight to that counterbalance so that it can find some equilibrium. So let me ask you being a father now, having another child in the world, what's your I guess I'm trying to figure out what is your take on where we're heading in this world, and how do you raise a child or children in this world that we live in for them to be, I guess for lack of a better word, be secure and to be healthy?
My approach to rearing my children and guiding them through the world is to take as much of what I learned from my elders and instill it in them, as opposed to letting them learn it from the world themselves, because I feel like the better I can prepare them and instill in them the things that I learned and that I went through the fire and learned what worked and what didn't work, and giving them that advantage will ultimately determine where they're head in life.
One of the things that I learned later in life is about treating others how I wanted to be treated. And I go back to this whole situation about what matters to me. And once I started realizing that I mattered, I could apply that to the people who mattered in my life.
Right.
And that means my significant other, that means my children. So I've learned how to take this big circle, this world, and to condense it to where I now have dots. And I can connect all my dots. So when I'm in a circle, I can't manage all those things that are in my circle. It's like an atom. You got your proton, you got your neutron, you got your electron, and then you got the nucleus that's in the center of that. And these electrons, protons, and neutrons are all going around. But it has to be contained for me to be able to be my best to those dots. That's what creates my world. That's what creates my nucleus. And I'm always living in New York, and sometimes I'm always having confrontation or confronted with somebody who I don't even know, who's just acting crazy and foolish. And I had to start paying attention to, when arguing with a fool, make sure that they're not doing the same thing.
People can't tell who's the fool from a distance.
Exactly. I had to learn that. I was on the train one day on the subway, and he was a crazy dude, acting crazy and acting weird. And sometimes I just ignore him. But this particular time, I just watched him, and I looked at him, and he was intimidating and making everybody afraid of him and scaring them off. And I just looked at him, and my spirit just told me, just don't be afraid, just look at him, because he was just wilding out.
What was he doing?
He was like getting in people's faces and calling them MFs, and people were moving from the seat, and he was sitting down across from me, and he was just making people uncomfortable. And I just looked at him, and he turned and looked at me, and he said to me, "What are you looking at?" I said, "I'm looking at you." that means you're looking at me. And he just stopped and chilled out. He says, you got a good point. But that just goes to show you, it's the approach. I wasn't going to be afraid or intimidated from him. I wasn't going to give him that power over me. But I also wasn't going to be combative with him. So I just brought it to him that means you're looking at me.
What creates that mindset to where somebody wants to be in that situation where they want to terrorize the subway car?
I think there's a lot of mental illness that goes on. There's a lot. I live in the city. I see a lot of mental illnesses. Both subliminal and very blatant. And I actually prefer the people who are blatantly mentally ill than some of the subliminal, because I get too close to those people. I was like, oh damn, they off.
Yeah.
And that's just too close for me. Too close before I find out that they're not right. So I just think there's a lot of mental illnesses that go on in our society. It comes from familial problems growing up, being raised. I think we've become a product of our environment. For a lot of people, they are hurt. You know what the saying is, hurt people hurt people.
Absolutely.
So I just have to be my best in spite of all that.
So does society do enough for mental illness, or do they just lock them up?
They can't lock them up anymore because we don't have the funding. Before we had the funding, we could lock them up. Now they just send them out into the world. So
there's no mental.
There's a few places.
Facilities.
There's a few places, but not to the point where it used to be. And now a lot of the homelessness is due to mental illness. Nobody in their right mind wants to be homeless.
No.
People who have severe drug addictions are because of mental illness. That's just self-medication. So a lot of abuse, whether it's physical, mental, emotional abuse, is due to mental illness. We're in a very sick society.
Agreed.
This society is very sick. So everyone tries to find their way to medicate themselves or to make them feel better. We're all in a society now where you either have to be sedated or you have to be stimulated.
Must be something in the water.
Yeah. Read or watch The Hunters.
Yeah, I got to get back into that. I'll definitely probably catch the episode tomorrow, maybe two. Any other good recommendations on binge watching?
The Outsider. I watched The Outsider on HBO. That's good. It's a Stephen King book, and it's good acting. It's a good plot and subplot, and I enjoy watching it. It takes me on a little sci-fi thriller adventure.
Do you think there's too much available to choose from to watch?
That's why they call it TV programming. So we can be programmed. Society is setting it up for us to be more cocooned, to be more at home.
Right.
We have everything online now that can be delivered to your home. We have from dinners or meals to groceries that can be delivered to your home. Your clothing can be delivered to your home. We have all these television networks, streaming, all these different platforms that we can sit at home and idly sit in front of our big screen television and binge watch for hours and then go to bed and start off the new day. So yeah, I think the way the society is setting us up, whether it's intentional or unintentional, that they're preparing us to be more cocooned.
Now, does that bring us closer together, or does it?
Does it separate us? Definitely separates us, because we're becoming high tech but low touch. So we're all into the age of technology and computerization and being able to use our computers and text and email. But how many times are you calling a person up and talking to them and saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" We're going and knocking on their door and say, "Hey, I was just in the neighborhood." Do that now, you get shot.
Yeah, you can't knock on anyone's door. I wouldn't recommend it as a black male in America.
No. So what has happened? Because you used to be able to do that.
Well, in certain neighborhoods. I remember when I used to go door to door cutting grass as a middle schooler, and I would never have done that in today's climate.
Do you know how many times I've gone to people's houses that I've never gone to, living in Iowa, asking if I could cut someone's grass, or can you buy some Boy Scout candy bars or school candy bars, and people give me $1. And no one has ever called me out of my name or said anything. And this was in Iowa in the 60s and 70s. And now we're in 2020, and you're telling me that it's more problematic to do that?
I guess we've progressed in a lot of ways and
regressed in others. Yeah. So, and that's the thing, that being on this earth, as long as I live, I'm like that. I feel like I'm that conduit between my parents and the older generation, because I was able to hear those stories, and I was able to see some of them, witness some of those things, those atrocities that happened back in the day. I remember going down to with my family to Mississippi. We didn't fly, we drove in a car from Iowa down to Mississippi. My father would only drive certain places during the daytime because he didn't want to get stopped, because he grew up in Mississippi, and he was fearful of his family.
Right.
So I remember one time we were going to Memphis, Tennessee, and it was at night. And outside of Mississippi is West Memphis, Mississippi.
Okay,
and so so a little further away from that, we had to stop because I had to use the bathroom and my father had to get gas. So I remember going to the gas station, and I see the restroom at the side of the gas station. It said restroom, and I saw the lights. So I pop out the car, Granny beehive it to the restroom. My father tells me to stop, and I'm like holding my hands between my legs. Said, "Dad, I gotta go to the bathroom. The restroom's right here." He said, "You can't go there." I said, "What are you talking about?" It says restroom. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't see the sign above it. It says white only. Wow. This is in my time. Wow. I'm living to tell you that. He said, "You have to go over there." And over there was like this dilapidated outhouse that was on the side of a hill that I was afraid that if I'd gone in, it would tip down the hill.
I'm sure that was intentional.
And I never forgave my father for that. I was so mad, and for such misguided anger, that I blamed him for me having to experience that. And because he wasn't able to communicate to me because of how it made him feel, imagine how it made a grown man tell his son that he can't go to a restroom.
Right.
That I had misguided anger towards my father most of my adult life, until I was in Memphis, Tennessee for an executive conference. And we had this high-level executive conference when I was with Liz Claiborne and Nietzsche. And we afterwards went to B.B. King's to listen
Beale
to
Street.
Yeah, on Beale Street to listen to music. And I had to go to the restroom. So I go back, and there's these signs that says restrooms, and had this arrow pointing to where you have to follow this path in B.B. King's to go to this restroom. And it says restroom under construction, so you have to keep going back. And then when I got there, it was a porta potty. And it hit me. It's like, here I am, one of the top executives for Nietzsche, Liz Claiborne. Think I'm balling out. I'm like there, and I am now reduced to going to this outhouse like everybody else to go to the bathroom. And this feelings of emotion, and to this day I get emotional thinking about it, about my father. And I went back, and I left the place, and I went back to the hotel, and I cried like a baby. And I called my dad, and I told him, I'm thankful that you are still alive for me to tell you I apologize. And it was one of the first times that my father and I ever talked man-to-man, one-on-one, to where we were able to see eye to eye. To tell him all these emotions that I have had, let's got into emotions that I had towards him because of that unfaithful day. And he forgave me. And then he started talking to me about, all his atrocities that he saw.
Oh man.
Growing up in Mississippi. And I'm saying to myself, who am I? Who am I to get mad or upset at my father when what he's seen through his eyes? But I didn't know. He never told me that until that day, that when I opened up and told him that I was sorry.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, I don't know if I ever told you that story, but it's to show you or to tell you that it's not that long ago.
No.
It's just a generation.
Outlaw lynching.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was 4 people who said no. Representative from Florida, Kentucky, Texas, and an independent from Michigan, just for everybody to know.
I mean, what would be the reason that would be a bad idea? I mean, why would somebody vote against it?
Because they can.
Just to let the people out there know that there's a few of them left.
Yeah. Just because they can.
Okay. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I think that was definitely a good trial run, so we will finish there and see what we have. This is the DripChat podcast, where we discuss all things fresh. This includes, but is not limited to, personal style experiences as they relate to everyday life. My intention is to send you off better and more knowledgeable than you arrive. All accounts and interviews are real and come from real people. I am your host, Space the Great. Be sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you choose to consume your daily listening. We are currently streaming on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. Lastly, we can be found at DripChat Podcast on all social media platforms. Tell a friend to tell a friend that this is DripChat Podcast, the podcast for people that know fresh.